Court. So the Supreme Court effectively killed affirmative action today. I know a lot of y'all are out of the loop. Some of y'all only focusing on the things that y'all think make the most sense when it comes to these hosts for the streets and all of that. But the Supreme Court actually struck down affirmative action. So we're going to get right into that. Make sure, again, that you guys hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Let's get right into the show because we got a lot to cover today, ladies and gentlemen.
Taking a live look at the U.S. Supreme Court, where less than 30 minutes ago, justices issued their ruling that colleges and universities must stop considering race in applications, striking down affirmative action in the college admissions process. Now, this actually overturns an earlier 2003 ruling that found that race considerations were constitutional.
Now, let's stop there before we get into it. Again, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, which has been in existence since I was born, at least. And they struck down affirmative action. And what affirmative action did for colleges and universities basically was it basically gave preferential treatment to people of color. And if you were a double minority, if you're a woman, if you're a black woman, and all of this other type of stuff, I think even white women were considered because they were considered a minority also. But what it did was it allowed for race to be a consideration as far as giving a leg up, which in my opinion is a form of reparations, but we're going to get into that in a minute. It gave a leg up to people that were of a different race in a proposed system, because I had this conversation with a guy last night that actually dipped out when I started asking the hard questions. It gives preferential treatment to a group of people based off of the idea that they have a lower hand in our system as far as race. So when I hear people have a conversation and they say, well, the system was set up against us, I'm going to tell you how the system was really set up against you by even allowing for affirmative action to exist in the first place. But let me play the rest of this.
Prem 2's Nicole Hernandez live outside of the federal courthouse in Spokane to break down what we know right now about this case. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Tim Channing. So we are still going through that majority opinion right now, but here's what we know so far. Like you guys mentioned, the Supreme Court.
Shout out to Jeremy. I'm going to read that super chat shortly.
Saying that the race-based admissions policies through Harvard and the University of North Carolina are unconstitutional. There is a lot in this opinion, of course, but the court found that the admissions program violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That clause essentially says all people must be seen as equal in the eyes of the law. The court ruled 6-3 in this case, with the court's 3 liberal justices dissenting the decision. And Chief Justice John Roberts authored the majority here. Roberts said, quote, that for too long universities have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges vested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin.
Let's stop there. Let's read that again because I don't want y'all to skip past this. For too long, universities have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, meaning how you're able to overcome and whether or not you're able to succeed based off of the fact that you are good enough, not based off of your skin. Skills built, meaning this is something that has to be put in you, and then you have to continue to manifest your greatness based off of how much work you put in. Or lessons learned, meaning that you're making the adjustment, you're pivoting, you're failing forward, you're continuing to evolve, and then as a result, you're building yourself up to be a better version of yourself, to be able to compete in a global society, which is what we should be anyway, right? Black people, in a lot of instances, they look at it based off of what's going on in their hood and how they feel. Other countries are competing based off of global dominance. And so when you think that your enemy is the person that's standing next to you that may have a different skin color than you, what you don't understand is that we're in a class war, and we're on a war for our lives based off of how you're supposed to compete on a global scale, not how you're supposed to compete in your own hood. He said, but it's instead the color of your skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. Let me continue to play this and then I'm going to deep dive into it.
Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice, end quote. A conservative advocacy group asked the justices to reserve the precedent and ban race-related admissions policies. Now, it is important to note here, Washington and Idaho are among 9 states that have banned the use of race-based policy in admissions in public universities and colleges. And we, of course, are continuing to gather more information about this specific case, and we're still waiting on 2 others here from the Supreme Court. Today, this morning, just after 7, the Supreme Court released 3 of the 7 that we are still waiting for based on their opinions here. The 2 big ones still left to hear about is the one about LGBTQ rights and freedom of speech, as well as their decision on President Biden's student loan debt relief.
So they still have more to cover, including freedom of speech, the alphabet community's rights. They're still determining and deciding what to do with Biden's student loans, because that is, but we've already got a ruling and we have an understanding of what's going on as far as affirmative action now effectively being struck down by the Supreme Court. God bless the Supreme Court. You guys are absolutely awesome. But let me deep dive a little bit further into this for you guys so that we can get the full scope of what's going on. All right. According to news outlets, Supreme Court issued a divided ruling on a pair of challenges to affirmative action policies at Harvard and the University of North Carolina with potential implications across higher education. Court ruled against the program, saying the majority of the opinion written by Chief Justice John Roberts that the systems in place lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and a lack of meaningful endpoints. Those admissions programs cannot be reconciled with the guarantees of the Equal Protection Clause. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? Okay, let me break it down for you from a C student's perspective. First and foremost, let me give you an example of something that I witnessed in real life and something that I see happening even today. And it was a story that I was going to cover, but this is even better, right? The first thing is, I remember it was a girl when I first graduated high school, and she was going to the University of Michigan. Now, the University of Michigan has a pretty good enrollment. They have a pretty stringent admissions program, in that you have to really be able to survive and hustle and get into that space. And this girl actually graduated from a very decent high school, right? But it was this girl that I went to go and see up at University of Michigan. Don't worry about what we did when we got there, but the conversation prior to that, you gotta finesse it a little bit, right? So I went to go see her up at the University of Michigan, and she was struggling. She was absolutely positively struggling. And I don't want to say her name, obviously, because I heard that she married and stuff like that now. So shout out to you, baby girl, whatever, if you're watching this. But I went to go and see this girl at the University of Michigan, and she was struggling, right? And she actually did really well in high school. And she was saying, yo, Anton, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you got good grades and everything like that when you was out and all of that. What do you mean you struggling? What do you mean that you're going to have problems, whatever? And she was like, yo, I wasn't prepared to be able to compete with these students up here. These kids they not messing around. These professors is not messing around. They don't care about where you come from. They don't care about what you look like. The only thing they care about is whether or not you're meeting the expectation and you getting the grade. You know what I'm saying? And she was fucking struggling. Now, I made sure that I alleviated a little bit of that pain. I'm just messing with y'all. But she was struggling. And what I concluded, which she didn't substantiate, but basically what she was hinting around at, was that the fact that she got into that program in the first place was largely based off of the fact that she was a black woman. They used their black woman privilege and basically affirmative action to be able to get themselves into a position that they couldn't compete in the first place. Similarly, there's a girl, a black girl that was in Baltimore that graduated, was basically in the top of her class and all of that. And she is now in college and she cannot compete, right? And she was largely admitted based off of the fact that they got the No Child Left Behind, and they got to make sure that the students graduate and all of that other type of stuff. But she wasn't able to compete once she got to college. She wasn't adequately prepared for college, let alone being able to go into the work world, real life, become an adult, and all of this other type of stuff. And this is one of the ways in which these programs, these leg up programs, these loan programs, these affirmative action programs, these race-based acceptance programs are working to actually hurt you instead of help you. And you think that because it's an opportunity for you to be able to get a leg up and get an opportunity or get a business loan, it doesn't mean that you're prepared adequately to be able to compete against the other kids and the other students that's in that same arena as you. It doesn't mean that you have the adequate information to be able to actually run a business successfully. What I've largely said and what I've always wanted is I never wanted anybody to give me a leg up. I've never wanted anybody to give me preferential treatment, because what it does is it actually hurts me instead of helps me. It enables me to continue to do the thing that's not in my best interest instead of forcing me to compete. Now, when you get me in a room when somebody else has actually got a leg up, I'm going to make them look like a fool because they don't have the tools that I have. They don't have the character. They don't have the work ethic. They've always been given and coddled and told that they were special their entire life. But the reality is that when you separate the real from the fake and you have the ability to be able to compete based off of your merits and compete based off of what it is that you can put into it and not based off of anything else. That's why I say character is the number one thing to determine whether or not you do business with somebody or you align with somebody. It's a completely different ball game. And so the fact that the Supreme Court is doing this is actually a benefit to black people. Aside from the idea that it's racist to discriminate against other people based off of the color of their skin, because then you get preferential treatment. So now we talking about the system that you say is against you actually is the thing that's giving you the leg up over other people that may even be better than you. So it's somebody, you both go into a job interview, which is the very thing that you complain about. It's reverse racism. And then they get what if a black woman get the job because she's a double minority and you don't get the job as a man, but you better than her, but they had to give and meet expectations in order to meet a quota for diversity, equity, and inclusion in that company, and you don't get the position? What if you don't get the position, not because you're not better than her, not because you're not good enough, not because you can't do the job, not because you wouldn't drive profits within the company, but she's actually the worst candidate for the job, but she got it based off of preferential treatment and not based off of the merits that she's walked into as far as her qualifications and her resume and her background and her ability to do the job better. The only reason she got the job is because she looked differently than you. And this is the very thing that we see being complained about from people in the first place. And when you put your kids in a position based off of the color of their skin and not based off of their merits, they're going to fail. They are going to fail 10 times over. And I'm telling you, the system was actually set up for you to fail by putting affirmative action into place in the first place, because it did not give you the tools to compete. If you wanted to compete, then you should have just advocated for equal, not a leg up. And this is what we see people talking about every day. So let me just go into a little bit more and then we're going to deep dive. It said, but the court did not rule out race entirely in admissions programs, adding that nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected the applicant's life, so as long as the discussion is concretely tied to the quality of character or unique ability of that particular applicant to contribute to the university. Furthermore, it goes into, okay, I think that's it for now. We're just going to leave it at that. So as a result, basically what this is saying is that the Supreme Court wants you guys to truly operate as equals. If you're good enough, then you compete. And I thought this is what feminism was. I thought that this is what people wanted. Isn't feminism equal? Equal rights, equal opportunities, equal suffering that comes along with your decisions. And this is why I'm seeing this happen all the way across the board, as far as men, as far as society, as far as race. Nobody wants any excuses anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of the extras. We're going to remove the leg up. We're going to remove all of your excuses, and we're going to let you compete. And now you got to go out there and grind like I do for the resources. And we're going to judge it based off of the merits of what it is that you put together, and not based off of what you look like or what you got between your legs. I'm with that. I'm cool with that. So that's the latest update with the Supreme Court. I'll keep you guys updated with that.